What if knowledge around the business of real estate allows you to better understand the mechanics so you can leave a timeless physical legacy? Good morning. I'd like to welcome you to the Design Your Legacy podcast. I have the pleasure to introduce you again to Lee Stone. Paul Stone, is a CEO and partner with the House of Stein. After a storied career designing high-end residential projects, in 2011, Lee diversified into commercial and the hospitality markets. He went on to perform works on larger commercial, hospitality, marina, and retail master plan schemes. House of Stein now encapsulates a full-service range business, crafting projects at their genesis regarding feasibility, branding, funding, and execution of the site. Lee continues to accept private design commissions on a case-by-case basis. And we're here today to discuss the mechanics. So if there is a member of the next generation community or anyone out there that has an idea of a real estate development project, but they quite don't know what really needs to make it a successful business case, Lee is here to share his thought leadership. Welcome, Lee.
Hi, Angelina. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks so much for returning. So where would you like to start regarding maybe some of the difficulties in the field or some of the blind spots that you've seen in your years of working with a variety of clients, whether it's hotels or just a solopreneur who has a big vision?
I think preparation. We've got to really dig into the project and understand what is it that you want to do. You know, we talk about an idea, but where does that idea come from? And, you know, how do you support that idea from a business perspective? And then how do you document this something so that an investor or a bank can then take a look at it and quickly get all the facts, get all the data, and then render a decision? And this is, you know, at its core, that's what we do. That's what we help. We help clients take their raw idea and give it some shape and make it a tangible something, which can then be converted into an investable product or an investable project.
Yes, yes. And I know one of the things that you've spoken to me about, whether it's in our preamble today or in prior conversations, is the importance of understanding the marketplace precisely so that whether the idea can be encapsulated in a one-pager, the end investor can truly wrap their mind around what it is that the deal is all about.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's nothing worse than, and I mean, I receive pitch decks all the time on a daily basis. Sometimes they're 10 pages, 100 pages, or 1,000. And there's nothing worse than having to work your way through a huge amount of documentation. Really, the project needs to be conveyed in one page. That's your executive summary. So the basic elements of the deal, what's the intent, what is the capital requirement, you know, the basic, where it's located, what you intend to do, what type of project it is, and a return on investment, the term. And then after that initial review period, then you can follow up with the rest of the documentation. So your first one page is critical because that grabs the attention. And depending on how the conversation goes, then you have an opportunity then to present more detailed information, you know, whether it be feasibility studies or market studies, financial modeling, you know, all these things then you can follow up with.
Absolutely. So let's say that there is an entrepreneur and they have an amazing idea and they would like to bring it to your desk and have you sell that to a group of investors, whether that's a family office, venture capitalist, an equity firm, and so forth. What is it that you are looking for when you just hone in on that pitch deck? What is it that makes a successful business case for their project?
Well, two things really. There's two kinds of people that come to me. There's the kind of person that really has no idea what they're doing and they need guidance on everything. And that's where we basically take the case from them and then we detail it so that it's an appropriate package of information that can then be used for investment. The second kind of person, they already have a very good idea of what they want, and they've already sought maybe professional opinion, and they come to us already with a pitch deck, and then we can use that with our existing network of investors. But I tell you, 9 times out of 10, the information that we get is just not satisfactory. It's missing holes. The intent isn't quite clear. So really, there's some pretty major things that if you've got an idea, there's a handful of things that you really need to stay focused on, and that is, what's your market? Where are you entering the market? So your location, the type of product it is, demand there is for this thing. And then you need to start defining its location. Where is it? The site, does it have planning approval? Confirmation of that. You'll be surprised at how many cases I get, and they just don't even have the basic planning. So there's so many stumbling blocks in this process. So that's why it's so important that at the beginning, you have everything figured out.
So,
because if you, sorry.
So no, I'm sorry to interrupt. So I'm just trying to, for any of the new listeners, let's say, especially if they're under age 40, and this is the first time they're hearing this. So first, number one is get very clear on the intention. Is that correct?
That's right. Make sure that your intent is communicated really, really well. And that there's demand in the market for it. So if it's residential load, fine. Commercial hospitality, it doesn't really matter, but as long as there is demand for that product.
Okay, wonderful. So I'm just breaking it down into baby steps. So number one, the intention to get very clear on it. Number two, understanding the demand specifically within that marketplace. Mm-hmm. So I know one of the things you've said is, and this connects to the demand, is when this is presented to a group of investors, and let's say it's flying colors and it's a great market and there's no recession, that's the ideal scenario. But let's say that there is a bank, Signature Bank or something, and they go under, or something happens, and the investors ask that question of, well, how do we get our money back? I think that is the being able to think through, what are those questions that the investors will ask? Because if the market shifts or changes and they get a little scared, and we'll talk about drawdown schedules in a moment, but I think clearly understanding the demand as that second key point helps reassure those that bring their money to the table. Is that kind of right?
Well, yeah. Your market, the market demand, it's your job to do the research to make sure that demand exists. We've got a couple of topics there that are kind of difficult to extract, but we can always come back to the banking situation in a little bit if you like, because that is a relevant topic today. We have banks folding, and that's a serious issue. But how does that impact? If somebody is creating a project to fund, usually speaking, the bank finance piece only accounts for a percentage of the total raise. For example, if you need if you have a $10 million project, then 60%, 50%, 70% of that will come from bank finance. Now, obviously, this banking situation is really only affecting the smaller regional niche banks, and it's not really touching the big nationals at the moment, the big four. But who knows? But this is a unique situation. What we really help clients with is taking their idea and breaking it down in such a way that it becomes an investable something. And then we can move that to either private equity sources, or bank finance is one of them, but ultra high net worth. And we can start to package a deal together. And that's really our forte.
Lovely, lovely. Okay, so I know one of the things you also look at is entitlements and permissions. So would you speak into that, because this might also be new language for someone who's listening for the first time?
Sure, absolutely. Well, entitlements and planning, it's the basic. This is think of it like a stepping stone. If you're proposing a residential project, the site has to be able to support what you're proposing. So obviously you would go to your local planning and building department and verify what are the local zones and the planning permissions for that particular lot. I mean, this is basic due diligence that anybody should perform when they're talking about making an acquisition for a new project. And you know, sometimes people are quite savvy and they're happy to do this on their own. And in other instances, you know, we can take that task from them and actually perform it, you know, perform due diligence for them. But it's a critical step. And you do the research, and we get right down, you know, a certain process of the project, and then it falls down because they just don't have the correct permissions.
Sure, sure. I know one of the things you mentioned before is that third-party feasibility study. If somebody can invest in that third-party data, how useful and valuable that is.
Oh yeah, I mean, this is, well, there's different layers of projects. You know, you have a small residential project. Now, obviously, the due diligence requirement for that is much tighter. It's easier. It's compact. But if you have a commercial project or a restaurant or a hotel, then it's vastly more difficult. Third party provides an investor or a bank a level of independent review or analysis of the details. That can be permissions, it can be market, it can be that the proposed design is consistent with what the market will absorb. And it goes through a vast variety of details. And it just clarifies the project, and it gives it a third party review that is independent, and an investor can rely upon that. Now, obviously, these things come at a cost. You know, and depending on the project, you're likely to engage, you know, one of a big player, you know, essentially KPMG or EY, Knight Frank, for example, to be able to compile this type of report for you. I mean, we use these groups all the time. So, but this is a critical step. Obviously, it depends on the project, but it is a critical point, and it comes at a cost. So, really, when you're talking about fabricating a project or crafting a project, you really need to understand how to do it, because there are costs involved. And if you make a mistake, it can be absolutely terrifyingly expensive.
So the feasibility study then is a key strategy to help ensure the business case that one would make for their project. I think you would also mention that, let's say somebody's interested in hospitality, and as people begin to travel more these days and explore,
Yeah.
I think even you know, there's this phrase called inconspicuous wealth, which means that it's more understated. And so individuals these days are seeking out experiences. And so let's say somebody has an interest and they said, well, I'd love to create a hospitality project. One of the things you've mentioned is that perhaps in their business case, you would have them look at scale, location, brand, projected ROI, planning permissions, of course, key count, and of course the feasibility study. So is that kind of getting them on the right track?
Yes. I mean, so those are some of the items that you need to touch on. Within your project expose, if you like, this is a brochure that promotes the project. You need to be able to cover these topics. In the case of hospitality, yes, you need to know basically what is it going to look like, how many keys it has, or how many suites, projected occupancy, what food and beverage venues might be within this complex. And all these pieces of information build a picture. And it's that picture that is then used to create a financial model. Now, a financial model, I mean, we create them all the time, but they can be produced by accountants or whomever. But that then builds the financial element of the case. Some of the other items, branding you mentioned, is this particular venue, is it going to be a celebrity brand? You know, we work with a lot of fashion designers that are very keen right now to have their brand name associated with, you know, 5-star luxury hospitality. Is it going to be a conglomerate, a Hyatt, for example, or is it going to be a boutique operator? And all this kind of research and all this pre-deal selection, if you like, this cements the case. What it does is it creates a tangible something. Now, when that case gets passed on to an investor, whether it be a commercial fund or you know, private equity or a family office, or, you know, a fund that specializes in hotel funding, these are all the pieces of information that they need to make a decision.
Lovely, lovely. I just wanted to bring that up because I know that you've taken time out of your day and you've got a wealth of knowledge about this subject, and to be able to break it down for somebody that has that you know, experience, or if they're brand new to the landscape and they have big ideas because what they see out there. So another key point I'd love for you to make a distinction about is the distinction between pre-construction and execution.
Well, there's many different phases to a project. Okay, you have pre-deal. Let's break it down this way. You have the work that's necessary to raise the money. Okay, and then you have pre-construction, which is the detailed planning, the architectural, all the technical specification, and all the work that goes to support the actual start of project. And then you have the start of project, the execution phase, which is the physical build out of the site. And as that works its way through, obviously you have a completion phase, of which there's several checks that make sure that, you know, what is actually produced is what was intended, and everything is checklist and okay. But this is probably a good segue into your drawdown schedule, and some people may have heard about this before. But basically, at the beginning of the project, pre-deal this is, and you have this financial model that breaks down all the nuts and bolts of the project. You know, how much is it going to cost, and how much revenue are you going to get, and when are you going to get it? And it goes into absolute finite detail. Once you have your total sum, the project is going to cost this, and it's expected to generate Y revenue. Well, the drawdown schedule basically, it gives a little bit of protection in a way to an investor, because they're not going to issue you a blank check and just, you know, say, okay, if the total cost is 50 million, we're going to give you 50 million right at the beginning. No, never happens. It's usually divided up into either monthly, quarterly installments that go through the process. And then there'll be a third-party review of the spend. You know, it's important to realize that when a disbursement is made to advance the next stage of the project, that there will be a company or a third party that will then review what you've done, where you are in the project, and if the next installment is appropriate. So there's always a level of double checking.
Yes, and I know one of the things that you've also mentioned is the importance of maintaining relationships with all the parties at the table and avoiding those communication breakdowns. So you've shared with me in previous conversations, and I think this is vital for anyone that is interested in the subject to know, that one of the worst things to say is, I don't know. And instead, a better thing is to be able to look around the corner to understand the concerns of the investor, so that that research and that due diligence can be done ahead of time, so that that investor or group of investors feels like you have their back, you have their best interest, you understand the value of the land, for instance.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, um, if an investor in whatever shape or form, they're trusting you to be able to perform on this project. Um, and it's important to be able to look at it pragmatically. Don't overreach. We always take a position to be conservative in our numbers, in our projections. We'd rather beat an estimate and be conservative than try and overreach to some unrealistic number and then fail. But yeah, you need to look at the market carefully and make sure that what you're thinking about is actually going to be wanted. What's the demand for it? And you also have to look, okay, what happens if this plan doesn't work out? That What happens if that's the case? And that's mitigating risk, isn't it? And when an investor sees that you're taking a conservative approach, that you're making an extra effort to mitigate risk, then that will be appreciated. It will be.
Yeah, absolutely. I know another thing you've pointed out is, can that particular entrepreneur who's got a vision, let's say for that timeless
Mhm.
legacy asset, can they
Yeah,
build what they want to build within the budget? I think that's another key talking point that you've brought up in the past, to understand, how to, again, make the business case, but also, like you had said, um, to be realistic in managing expectations.
absolutely. But this is why the process of when you take a case on, okay, it's your job to go through all the detail and break it apart. Okay, and you need to stress test it. You need to figure out, is this really going to work? It's our job to be honest with the customer and say, okay, here are some of the problems that we can try and fix. But you absolutely have to be you have to be um, you have to be detailed. You've got to respond to the market. You can't just think in a bubble and what's the movie called with the baseball movie? What is it? Build it and
Sure.
they will come. Uh, it's not good enough. It doesn't matter how wow you think it is. I come across this all the time actually with people. They bring me a pitch deck and they think it's the most fantastic thing since sliced bread. And why would people not invest in it? Well, there's a million reasons why they wouldn't. Um,
But it's their dream, it's their baby.
it, well, it might well be their dream, and in some cases we can help. We really can. But um, so many times people come to me and they have very little to actually bring to the table, and actually this is probably a good point we should touch on. Um, and there's a disconnect between what people think investors will react and the truth, which is how investors are. If you come into the table with a project, it doesn't matter how good you think it is. It might be it might be an absolutely fantastic project, but if you come into the table with nothing, and if an investor meets you at the table and sees that you're not bringing anything at all, well, they will take advantage of you because it's their money. They will take the project and they will dictate terms, and you will get 5%.
Well, I
And
think, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think what you're pointing to is, if they're taking more risk in terms of skin in the game, as it said sometimes in the industry, then it could be
yeah,
common that they are going to perhaps dominate in terms of control. And that could be a surprising conversation to the other party at the table.
absolutely. In some cases, I talked to some really, really nice people, and they've spent years sometimes building this thing, whatever it is, and they've got tons of data and it looks great, and they may have spent a small fortune, on this particular thing, but they don't have anything else to put into it. And it's a shame to see the disappointment when, we are able to pair up an equity investor, and they turn around and say, well, yeah, we'll take it on, but we're taking 95% of the deal.
Yes. I think
and
what
it
you're
just
pointing, go ahead, sorry.
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, I think you're pointing to some of the realities in the field, that what is common, so somebody won't be surprised, is that that there can be kind of sometimes what can feel like an asymmetrical relationship because of who's bringing more to the table. And so I think a part of this conversation is to walk somebody through, the listener or the viewer, kind of what to expect, so that their great ideas don't just hit a wall, or just in a sense dissipate, because there are some amazing ideas, and there's much need on the planet right now to have those ideas come forth. And when set up properly, they can see the progress that it needs to have that idea and that project go to the finish line. But some of the blind spots we're talking about is the preparation, so somebody doesn't get shocked emotionally and then they could just shut down. And so I think one of the things you're most passionate about, and I think you said you love helping and guiding others through the process, especially around the pitfalls, whether it's knowing the great contractors, or not just being able to answer the questions, but being able to answer the questions to the level of the expectations of the investors even.
Yeah. I mean, it's in my position, I represent, my client. I take care of my client. And if I see that the project is weak, then it's my job to build strength, so that when we do go to an investor, that we're in a position of strength, not a position of weakness, because I know what's going to happen. If I don't do anything, this package, this individual or a group of individuals will be very, very disappointed. So it's my job to find the strengths. If there's ways that we can leverage other relationships and maybe acquire the piece of land, if we can, well, we try and deploy many different things. If we can bring a celebrity brand, that we build very unique use cases, that we layer income in a way that the project is very strong. We need to go to market, as in the financial market, in a strong position, because if you go in as a weak position, you're going to get taken advantage of. That's a role that I take seriously, because it's important that I protect the client and their project. I want them to succeed.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Well, I think again, you're just bringing a dose of reality to manage expectations, so that when somebody does get surprised, then they can go back to the drawing board and better understand how to we reapproach the conversation, so that it's in that position of strength, and also being able to think through what is it, and being resourceful, what is it we can bring to the table, so the case can look maybe more appealing, more enticing to that investor. Because again, investors think sometimes along the lines of ROI. They're not going to think about creativity per se. It's just a different set of metrics. What say you?
Some of them are, some are creative as well.
When it's their money at the table, yeah.
Yeah. Well, listen, the bottom line is that the ROI is king. Okay. But it needs to be an ROI that makes sense. Okay. Most of these guys, they've been around the table. And if something looks a little bit too good to be true, it probably is. ROI is king, but there are many other things that are just as important. What's the security? What's the time frame? Who are the players involved? Who's the team? What kind of third-party due diligence do they have? Did they pay for EY? Did they pay for KPMG? If they did, that's a very, very strong case. Is there clear market feasibility? Is there a clear market demand for this thing? Now, if an investor could, if a project principal can point to a feasibility study from, say, Knight Frank, that's a very compelling case that can be funded. So it's not just about the ROI. I've seen investors who actually have turned down higher ROI projects for something a bit more conservative, only because the case is just stronger. All around, it's strong. And the principals who put it together, they spent their money wisely in having the appropriate level of third-party reporting. I'll just give you a quick case, okay? This is just a quick example. I'm talking to a group right now, and your listeners will probably find this interesting as well. They say they've spent €5 million on it's a big project. Now, I don't see €5 million of work. I don't see it. But they say that they've spent it. Now, from an investor point of view, if you're going to spend that much money on building a case, it should be absolutely airtight. It should have full legal review. It should have full financial modeling. It should be at a place where it's just turnkey. I really shouldn't need to do anything with it. I should just basically take it and move it on. But it's nowhere, you know. So spending your time and your energy and your resources wisely right at the beginning of the project will make the difference. It will make a huge difference. And unfortunately, this is where I see so many people go wrong.
Well,
you know,
I'm going to interrupt you for one moment.
Squander.
I think this is why we're having this conversation right now, because people don't know per se, what is it that they need to have? What is it that they need to have up front? What is it that they need to speak into? What is it that they need to write about in their pitch deck or their business case? So this is exactly why we're having this conversation.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's because I see this all the time, and it's such a shame. You know, it can be large or small. You know, I don't just deal with big projects. I also deal with some small projects, and you know, checking the basics. You know, planning. What's the planning situation? That can be established within a phone call. You know, financial modeling. Then just go to an accountant and have them do a profit and loss. Market study. Well, okay. Well, there's two ways you can do a market study. You can either pay one of the big groups to have it done for you, and most of the time that's absolutely necessary. The other way, if it's a small project, yeah, take a look at some of the big developers around you. Yeah, what are they doing? What are they building? Where are they building? Can you get some information from that? If the predominant product is, say, 2-bed, 1-bath apartment, that should tell you something. If they're all building in, say, west of a certain city, well, that should tell you something as well. And also another great resource that is often overlooked. Google, you know, KPMG and Knight Frank. Look for market study 2022. Because a lot of these companies will actually, they produce vast amounts of documentation, brochures, market studies, and they put them out online. It's now free because it's last year's. Take a look at them, because they will always have some kind of projection into the future. You can use this to guide you.
Sure, as a part of the business case to help,
Yeah.
you know, your pitch and ideas. Absolutely. Some of the other things you have mentioned in the topic of the preparation up front in order to pass due diligence. You mentioned how long will it take to exit if need be? You know, if the investors want to know when they're going to receive their funds back. You've also mentioned things of, you know, what happens if there is a loss and those unexpected challenges, even including, let's say, if there's a general contractor and maybe they don't know as much as they said they knew, or maybe they're not the most ethical at times. And how do you address that up front so that you know that there is a plan B or some way to face that in mitigating the risk?
Well, I mean, we've all heard this term, self-build, yeah. And sure, you can be involved in a project to a certain degree, but you also need to recognize your weaknesses as well. When it comes to selection of general contractors, my preference is hire somebody that not just not just prepares a report on who to hire, but will kind of control the tender process. I mean, most of the cases that we get involved with, the physical build out of the case is put out to tender. And so I'll manage that situation. And the beauty of having a third party to deal with this is that if anything goes wrong, it's the blame is on them, it's not on you. That's
Liability. This is a conversation about liability now.
Well, it is. I mean, we're talking about vast amounts of money here, and you do not want to be personally on the hook for major decisions like this. You're much better off finding a third party who can then, make a qualified decision and manage the tender process, have direct oversight of the selection of the general contractors and all the other contractors, and make sure that they are actually performing that task to a professional standard. It's a lot of stress, and you don't need more stress, you need less stress. Okay, so where you can, try and isolate yourself a little bit, build a good team, surround yourself with a good team, and let them do their job. And then you'll have a much better chance of actually, the project will just run smoother, and the chances are that it'll be a success, and then everybody will walk away happy, and most importantly, the investor will see their exit.
Yes, yes. And I think happiness of all the parties at the table is really important for the long-term relationships. Would you speak into, I don't know if you're willing to or not, a project that you're working on right now regarding sustainable neighborhoods? Is something that you're passionate about? Is this something you might be willing?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
because I think this will be a part of your legacy. Just a hunch.
You think so?
I do.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah, coming out of COVID, I mean, it changed a lot for me personally, and I'm sure it changed a lot for a lot of other people as well. And I think I started to reach out to a lot of people and listen to a lot of people. And what came out of that was so many people were saying to me, I don't like the food prices. I don't like the way the energy prices are going. The quality of the food is not very good. I don't like living in the middle of a city. I want something different. And what started this whole thing off was a client that came forward and said, okay, I want you to design a house, and I want it to be completely off grid. I want to have some ground. I want to be able to grow my own vegetables, herbs, etc. And I thought, okay, great. So let's build a case around this. Okay, let's try and find 10-acre, 20-acre, 30-acre parcels, and let's develop small communities where we preserve a small allotment of common growing land so everybody can participate. And then we divide the rest up into various size residential products. It can be cottages, semi-detached, luxury villas. We have a full range. Solar arrays, protected site well water. And basically, encapsulate the self-sufficient um, concept of living, where residents can be part of the community, where they can grow their own produce, integrate with others. But what's important for us was we needed some guidance. You know, the process of putting food on your table is quite a task, and let's face it, not all of us are farmers. So we
Not
thought
all of
to
us have that
hire.
green thumb.
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen, I love to garden. Don't get me wrong, but it is a massive undertaking. You know, it really is. So we hire some people on site. They live on site. They work on site. They guide the whole process forward. And so, yeah, this is something that we're really passionate about, and we're looking at sites in the UK, in Serbia, in Turkey, Spain as well. Actually, we're talking to a group in Spain, and I'd love to do something over in California as well.
Well, I think that the idea is brilliant. And I know you're also really passionate about it. I just wanted to share your website quickly. And I think that the vision you have is practical given the landscape these days of kind of the interest that people have. You know, there's this idea of off the grid living. I know you often said that how it's been done in the past doesn't mean how it could be done in the future. In other words, somebody doesn't have to go without their critter comforts. It can be a luxurious experience, well thought through. And, you know, from,
Yeah,
you know, the site to the colors to the, you know, every aspect of it can be kind of a new product to serve communities these days and you know, humanity that's interested in this type of
hmm,
lifestyle and to be that developer that can bring it forth to the interested buyers and prospects within the marketplace, whether it's a you know, within Europe or North America, because of the awareness people have to live healthy these days and to invest in to their future and to create a lifestyle that serves them and also serves their values.
yeah. It's. I don't think it's also a very it's a personal topic for me as well, because um, you know, I've lived in the city. I've lived you know, just outside. I've lived in the countryside. I know what each of these things mean. And you know, country living, I mean, you can go on YouTube and you can find a whole bunch of people that, you know, they have a plot and they're going wild, and you know, they're growing things, and they're living off grid. And but it's hard work. It really is. Let's not pretend that farming is easy. It's not. But that's why it was so important for us to be able to lean on, you know, a few people who actually live on site, work on site, can guide the whole operation. Um, in the past, you know, we look at off-grid living, and they're usually, you know, they're I wouldn't call them luxurious by any means, but it's a market that is changing. You know, we are starting to see, you know, products come out now with which are self-sustainable, and that's exactly what we thought. You know, there's no reason why you can't live in a just a wonderful place. Um, you know, like this picture here that's coming up now. I mean, obviously, this kind of product right here is tailored for a Spanish market or the Turkish market. That something like that wouldn't work in the UK. But the point is that in every development that we do, it's tailored toward the local climate and the topography as well.
Yeah, well, I think it's a brilliant idea. And I think this is where the imagination comes forth. And when it can be paired with understanding the marketplace well, then it's something that then can go to the, you know, the next step into the conversation and doesn't have to just, you know, for lack of a better word, be something like a great idea that dies on the vine. I know that there can be many raw ideas that are amazing, but it really takes that, you know, that hand holding to go to that fully developed concept or what you would call that investable product. And so I think
Yeah,
this was kind of a conversation today to banter back and forth and to talk about some of the pitfalls and blind spots, but also to talk about some of the remedies. Because if somebody doesn't know, even just down to the language, like, you know, one of the things I had shared with you was starting out, I didn't know that the initials of DD meant due diligence in an email. And so sometimes if somebody doesn't have the lingo or know what it is that, other parties at the table know, I think it's critical to bring up some of the basics as well as some of the more intermediate and advanced knowledge, so that they know that it is possible and they don't have to become intimidated when a CPA or some attorney, makes it sound so complicated and complex.
Yeah. No, it's not complex at all. I mean, yeah, you're right. Everybody throws around these, DD. What does it actually mean? It just means more research, basically, double checking. You can do your own DD when you're, and in fact, you have to do your own DD when you're building a case, when you're building a project. You have to do your own DD, looking at the planning stage, these different things, crunching the numbers. That's DD. Now, sure, we have legal DD, we have financial DD, but that's just focused. It's focused double checking, if you like. And don't be intimidated at all by these terms. You're about to step into a world where they're going to take your raw idea and hopefully fund it. But there's a huge void between those two steps. Yes, you have a great idea, but now you need to craft a package around it. You need to give it shape and form and texture. And once you've done that, only then you can present it to a funder, because then now it's fully vetted. It's had its review process, and what you're saying in your expose or your brochure is the truth. And just be realistic. Yeah, I mean, these are some of the projects that excuse me. These are some of the projects that we've done. I mean, obviously those are significant in scale. Some of them marina based and significant land holdings. And we help, customers, not just within real estate. It can also just be within the business environment as well. We've got a fascinating case at the moment, which is a waste to energy project. And hopefully I'll be able to tell you more about that in the near future. But it's very, very interesting.
Well, I think, again, I think the value of having this conversation and to go back and forth about the lingo and different topics, whether it's the business case, the due diligence, the financial modeling, is because I'm seeing a number of individuals, I don't want to call them like new money, but they are definitely making their money, whether it's through cryptocurrencies, and now they have this opportunity to start to invest, but it's a whole other industry from the world of Bitcoin or cryptocurrency where they come from, and they're about to step into a new world. And if they don't have the knowledge that they need to, or some type of foundational knowledge, like you had said, they could lose their shirt. And to avoid that, this is kind of the reasons why we're exposing them to some different ideas and to let them know that, that your services are available, but also just to know what to watch out for, the good, the bad, all of it, because it can be very exciting, but it can also be.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the biggest things that I can probably say to your audience is, listen, there are lots and lots of people out there and brokers. There's some great people, don't get me wrong, but there are an awful lot of people who
might not know as much as they appear to know.
Yeah, that's true. But what their play is this. Listen, we've got the connection. We know all the investors. We've done hundreds of millions in deals. We're going to charge you $100,000 up front. Okay. And I would say if you get that kind of response, run for the hills, because yes, there are costs involved, but usually those are staged. I mean, that's how we normally work. We stage our progress and we stage our billing so that our clients, they understand what we're doing, they can see progress, and that mitigates their risk as well. But it's not easy, and sometimes I hear this from some people that, oh yeah, it's dead easy. We're just, we got access to billions. Don't worry about it. We'll get it sorted. No, it doesn't happen like that. This is complicated business. This is serious business, and it needs to be. It's careful, methodical work. And yeah, if anybody's looking for project financing, and you hear something like that, oh, it's dead easy, don't worry, we deal with hundreds of billions or hundreds of millions, chances are it's not real. So just be careful.
Yeah. Well, I think what you're suggesting is that they go in with their eyes and their ears open, and to know that it's always a good idea to have that second and third and fourth conversation, to know all of their options, so they don't just believe the first person that approaches them, that makes it sound so in some ways maybe too good to be true, but also just that they need to maybe know more than even the other people at the table, because there's obviously there's a strength to looking out for what's coming up on the landscape. I mean, that's one of the things that makes leaders great, but that oftentimes comes with experience. Like, they say, oh, it's just common sense, but common sense comes from life experience. When you put your hand on the stove and you get your hand burned, I mean, it's one thing if somebody else tells you, but it's another thing when you have your own pain in the game and you learn firsthand, what it is to maybe not know as much as you needed to know. And definitely when the pain shows up on your doorstep,
But I mean, there's some practical reasons too why you want to engage the right kind of people that have got experience in this. I'll just give you a quick example. Let's say you have a project that is 10 million, for example, and let's just say it's an apartment building. Now, the way that we break down a project is we try and financially engineer it, if I can use that term. We try and break it down and work with the numbers so that we make it as efficient as possible. So you have a 10 million project, say, for some residential units. And we're going to go for, say, 30% equity, 70% debt, meaning 70% comes from the bank, as in traditional bank financing, 30% is coming from private investment. Okay, so that leaves us with a 3 million capital raise. Okay, that's an actual cost that somebody needs to pay, and the bank will pick up the rest. All right, so let's try and financially engineer this little example. Let's say that we break this into 2 phases, and we take the profit from phase 1 and we move that to phase 2. So we reduce the cost of phase 2. Now all of a sudden, so we don't need a full 3 million anymore. We actually need much less, because we've taken the profit from phase 1 and we've moved that to the cost of phase 2. So there's many different things we can do on a financial level that can make a project be much more efficient, and that means bringing the cost down. So the out-of-pocket cost is way less than what you originally thought it was. So it's really important that when you hire somebody like us, that we've got that experience to be able to break down a project and make it efficient, so that, okay, in that example, it's not going to cost 3 million anymore. It'll probably cost nearer to 1.5, 1.6 to actually get it done. So is that a benefit?
Very much. Thank you. Let me just kind of recap maybe 4 key points for the listener, and then I'll let you say whatever you'd like to say in final thoughts. Okay, so
Sure.
I think in summary, you've mentioned understand the market precisely, #precisely. Number 2, develop what it is you want to do, but make sure it suits the market. Number 2. Number 3, spend a lot of time looking ahead, understand where you are and what is likely to happen, and keep an eye on those things. Be conservative and realistic, obviously, when you spend that time looking ahead.
Mm-hmm.
Number 4, utilize that 1-pager to help communicate the deal in the project. Final thoughts, Mr. Stone.
Yeah, the 1-page is key, but be ready to follow up. It's okay to have a few hundred pages of data after the fact, Because if somebody's interested and they pick up the phone and they say, yes, yes, Angelina, we'd love to proceed with this project with you. You better be ready to follow up with that few hundred pages of detail after. So yeah, the one page will open doors for you, but you've got to be ready to you've got to be ready to fire both barrels when that door does open. Well, I think follow-up remarks, I think, well, the nature of your channel is about legacy, isn't it? Creating a legacy, and how do you do that? And real estate has always been, a very well, it's a fascinating topic for me personally, but it's an industry that does generate a lot of wealth, and I think as people are weighing their options of how to build a long-term legacy, that real estate is going to be a powerful draw to them. So, if you've got an idea, I would say start penning it down. Try and give it some shape, because it might be a dream today, but if you spend some more time with it and get some proper guidance, there's no reason why it can't become a reality. So yeah, dream big and get it down on paper, and if it can be funded, then well, we'll certainly try and fund it, but just try for it.
Excellent, excellent thought leadership. Thank you very much, Lee. I know we set the intention at the very beginning to bring some knowledge forward. So if somebody could understand the mechanics of how to take an idea from raw concept to the investable product, I hope that we have offered some breadcrumbs for their consideration in today's podcast episode. So if you are listening on Apple Podcasts, please remember to rate and review. Or if you're tuning in on YouTube, please remember to like and subscribe. And thank you so much for joining us this week. And thank you, Mr. Stone, for speaking once again to your talents,
Thanks
as
very
well
much.
as the subject of legacy.
Thanks for having me on.